Hello everyone, I'm back again, and this time I'm going to be reviewing the Samsung Q90r soundbar. This was a long time coming after my Nakamichi review and how many comparisons I did, so here we go. Let's first talk about speaker placement. So speaker placement is pretty straightforward, however, there are a couple of things you should know. The first is that with the soundbar itself, it's very big, very wide, so you have to have the space on the front of your cabinet for it. It's also very long, almost as long as my 75-inch television set. So this is something definitely you need to keep in mind, because if you don't have the space, then you don't have the space. Just to give you an idea as to how big this thing is, I actually had to push my TV back by a couple of inches just to fit it on the stand. Next is the woofer. So the woofer is a 8-inch right side firing driver. Now, I don't really like this implementation, but you know, I am trying my best to let it grow on me. The thing I don't like about it is, in order to have bass fire across the room, you have to have the bass actually facing, you know, the direction that you want it to. So, you know, yeah. So when they say Samsung recommends putting it up against the wall, now I don't recommend doing that, because if you do that, for example, with this wall here, ignore all the cable-y mess, then the driver will fire all the way through the cabinet like so, and the air from that bass will be hitting the back wall. And yeah, it'll give you a shake, but not the kind of shake that you want. You want an evenly distributed bass across the room. So I put the bass woofer right next to where the Nakamichi used to be, and that's just by personal preference, but I recommend you do the same. The next thing about the woofer is it's actually smaller. I mean, I already said it's 8 inches, whereas like the Nakamichis are 10. But like, look, compared to before, the woofer doesn't even come up to the top of the table there, and it's not quite as wide as the table either. So again, personal preference thing, but I prefer the Nakamichi woofers, even though they're much larger and take up way more space. Next is the rears. So the rears look like so, but they have height channels, unlike the Nakamichi. So, you know, but here's the catch-22, my friends. If you want to make full use of the Q90r system, those height channels right there, they need to be firing directly above your head, or set up so that they'll fire directly above your head, whether they are where I've got them or behind you, and they have to be approximately 3 to 4 feet according to Samsung. So they're not as versatile as the Nakamichi soundbar system is, because they need to be very precise, and if you don't have it precise, then your sound signature is going to suck, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. Now, one upside to that, of course, or sorry, upside to this setup is they're completely wireless minus an AC cord, so, you know, you don't have to deal with the wire going into the back of the sub, like with the Nakamichi. Now, the Q90r has 2 HDMI in, 1 ARC out. And all my connections are kind of tucked in here. I'm going to warn you about that setup. So in order to plug everything in, you need to actually turn the bar right side up and plug everything into it that way. That's the only way. The grooves are too deep. You can't just go in from the back, and it's a royal pain in the butt. So make sure you have everything plugged in before you start this thing up. Consider yourself warned. And if you've watched my other video, then you know why. Okay. So we've talked about speaker placement and setup and why it's important. But the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is the app. You're like, what? The app? Yeah. Download the SmartThings Samsung app. And make sure you're on the latest firmware. I cannot stress this enough. The very first firmware that came with the Samsung Q90r was garbage. It would constantly have the rear speakers cutting in and out. It would have problems with the sub. And just the list goes on of complaints that I've read online. And most of it is firmware related, but not all of it. But we'll get into that later. Now, that being said, you need, once you're done all of that, you need to calibrate it. And here's where I have a major problem with the Q90r at its price point. It does not come with a demo disc. No Atmos demo disc at all. So I'm not sure how you're actually supposed to calibrate your system without the helicopter demo. Unless, of course, you're able to perhaps download the demos onto a USB stick and play them that way from your TV. But sheesh, you know? And that's assuming your TV can pass through Atmos, which, you know, most TVs before the year 2019 cannot do so. So, you know, I don't know. It's not my most favorite implementation of it, that's for sure. Okay, so that being said, once you've fired up your disc and you've gone down to the helicopter demo, and what you're basically going to do is you're going to set channels individually so that as the helicopter circles around you in a perfect circular motion, it'll sound the same no matter where it is in the room. Is it to the left? It sounds the same distance away. Is it to the back right? It'll sound the same distance away. Is it to the right? Etc. Once you're done calibrating your system to work with the acoustics of your room, and on the note of acoustics of your room before I continue, my room is what they would almost call acoustically perfect for this sound system. Almost, because it does have openings. So my room is rectangular and the ceilings are entirely flat. And you know, you got an opening there for the kitchen and you got an opening there for the front entrance, but yeah, otherwise though, the sound can travel pretty easily. This system requires that your ceilings be no higher or not much higher than 8 feet, and that your ceilings be completely flat and that your room be completely square. Because if it's not, you could have very, very mixed results regardless of the calibration that you're doing. Because this system is designed to fire sound up to the ceiling, and it's supposed to bounce off the ceiling and come back down to you. And then at the same time, it's firing sound to the sides as well, off the wall, and then back to you. So, you know, and then of course your rears are also firing sound above your head. So it's relying on sound reflection a lot. It pretty much completely relies on sound reflection depending on like how your sound system will sound, which is kind of a bummer. I think the Nakamichi is more versatile in this particular regard, but we'll get back to that later. Now that being said, once you've got the disc fired up and whatnot, how do you adjust? Well, you adjust by hitting this button and then hitting this button to adjust the level of which the output is. And you have to do this for quite a few channels. There's center, front left, front right, top, front top, rear levels, and rear height levels. So rear top. And you have to do this for every single one. You have to hit this and then adjust accordingly until the helicopter sounds correct. Then do it again, and again, and again. And it's kind of a pain in the butt. Now, one thing I got confused about when I first got this system was bass and sub. So, what do you're probably like, what do you mean? That's pretty straightforward, right? Well, on this system, no, it's not, my friends. The woofer button here increases the woofer's bass, but it doesn't increase the overall bass. If you want to increase the overall bass in the speakers, then you got to select bass here and then turn it up this way, or turn it down, depending on what level you want. Yeah, and if that wasn't, you know, that's got to be kind of confusing, I know, but trust me, I made that mistake the first time. I was like, why isn't this working? And then I turned up the woofer and, oh, okay, there we go. Also, there is treble selected with this as well. Now, on the note of everything, once you've got everything calibrated and yada yada, you're going to select different sound modes depending on what you're watching on or playing on your TV. Sound modes. You press this and they come up on the bar. So the first one to go over is standard. It's exactly how it sounds. A standard sound mode, nothing more, nothing less. Stereo, which is slightly up converted, but not to all speakers. It's just stereo sound. Next is adaptive, which basically takes any content you're throwing at it and it tries to adapt the speakers in the room to that content. Sometimes it works, sometimes the results are mixed, and sometimes it just doesn't work at all. So don't rely on it too much. But I find it works pretty good for some things, and I will show you later. Now, the next one is surround. Surround up converts everything into all speakers. This could be good or bad depending on what you're watching, but again, it's upscaling, it's not actually passing through. Finally, we have Gain Mode Pro, which basically adds height effects and environmental sound effects to the mix. And they are really loud, like really loud. If you don't have your system properly tuned, then it'll just drown everything out. And even if you do have your system properly tuned, it may just drown everything out anyway. This is your source button. That's how you select your HDMI 1 or 2 on the bar. It's also how you select Bluetooth or digital in, ARC, or Wi-Fi, or what have you. That's how you select it. Pretty straightforward, I would think. So after you've got all that set up and whatnot... Oh wait, one other thing. This bar supports HDR10, HDR10 Plus. It says that right on the box. It supposedly also supports Dolby Vision. Unfortunately, I am unable to test this as of the present moment. This bar also apparently has EARC, which, you know, my TV doesn't have, of course, it's too old, but eARC is supposed to be the next generation of sound, and it's just supposed to blow everything else away and, you know, buzz marketing terms. But hey, maybe it'll actually come true, and, you know, when I actually do have a TV that can test it, I'll test it out. But you have to be on the latest firmware update to do it, and that's why I said make sure you're on the latest firmware update, that as well. Okay. Now that being said, once your system is properly calibrated and you have everything set up the way you want, now we're just going to do a demo so you can hear how it sounds. Remember, this is entirely dependent on if your ceilings are flat, if your room is rectangular, and if you've set your levels properly. All of this comes into play here. And this also goes with the rears as well. Make sure the rears are properly positioned. If not, you're not going to get the sound you want. I cannot stress that enough. That being said, let's go into our rainstorm demo. I'm going to turn the volume up to about 30, which is actually overkill, but you'll hear some good sound. So here we go. I find that if the volume's not slightly above 24, I would say, the Atmos effect is not as powerful. You need to have the sound bouncing all over the walls in order to really hear the Atmos. So that could be a good or a bad thing depending on where you live and what your situation is. Anyways, continuing on, here's the rainstorm demo that I played with the Nakamichi. Keep in mind the Nakamichi might sound quieter only because I reviewed the Nakamichi late at night, so I had to keep the sound a little lower. But I digress. Here we go. Rainforest. Note how the bar picked up it was Dolby Atmos right away. Okay, so that was Dolby Atmos. We're using the demo disc after your levels have been calibrated properly. Now, we're going to play a game. So we can hear all the critters around. Some elevation effect going on there. But, yeah. One second, guys. Hold on. I'll be right back.
I'm ready to go when you are.
Okay, sorry guys, I'm back. I had to take care of something. Yeah. Anyway, now that we're back to it, you can hear the birds, the creatures and whatnot. As you turn, the water goes behind you. Turn left. Turn right. And yeah, that's Dolby Atmos in a nutshell on this system. And now we're gonna go to our PlayStation. Now I need to turn down the volume a bit, guys, because otherwise I'll blow the roof off. Now you can hear the wind. That's the Game Mode Pro doing its job. It's basically the same kind of idea as the, what do you call it, SSE. So that's a system which is just using Dolby Digital. It's incredibly loud. This system in general is just incredibly loud. It may be overpowering for small homes, absolutely overpowering for apartments. Consider yourself warned. This is only at volume level 17, and it's like the Nakamichi was at like level 22. Alright, so continuing on. We're going to fire up the switch. Note how much quieter that is. So this is the Switch's PCM audio being sort of upconverted with Game Mode Pro. But I had to turn it to about 25 to get a decent sound out of it. Gonna turn that, oops, gonna turn that down again, slightly. So that's PCM audio from the Nintendo Switch up converted with the Q90r. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm not really a fan of the Q90r's implementation of PCM. I find it to be kind of weak. But anyway, instead of using Game Mode Pro, perhaps we'll try adaptive mode here to see if that makes a difference. I didn't hear a huge difference, to be honest, guys. Maybe you did. You can leave a comment down below if you did. Okay, moving on. Now we've got our usual test. One second, guys. Oh, hold on. Maybe so. There it is. Took a minute, but now we have it. So this is the same thing that I played last time. Maybe not the same episode, but basically the same thing. We're just gonna play it first with. We're gonna switch the mode to surround, which I think is what most people would do. So you can kind of hear it's not quite as immersive in this implementation of it. Again, because it's up converting PCM to all these speakers, but it's just the job it's just doing is just kind of disappointing me a little bit. Let's try adaptive mode again, see if that makes a difference. Okay, and go. Oh, actually, I think that made a little bit of a difference. Not much of one. Okay, so, you know, I guess adaptive mode primarily is just for, like, news and stuff, or watching YouTube, because hearing people talk, because I just find that it sort of does a mixed bag of a job when it comes to like watching content like this. And yeah, so next we're gonna see music, or at least I'm gonna simulate it using YouTube. So you could hear a little bit of the bass there, not overly powering, but the music itself is much more crystal clear. And compared to the Nakamichi, there's just no comparison. The music is just better here. So now we're going to compare the two systems. I'm going to talk about some of the differences, and, you know, in the end, you can make a choice for yourself. So the first difference is the front bar size. Like I said before, this front bar is huge. Like, it's huge. It's very thick, it's very heavy, and it's awkward to plug things into. and it's really long. The Nakamichi has the advantage here because it's easier to plug things into it, and it's not as long, which means it can fit on more TV stands and actually look more like it belongs with smaller TVs under 55 inches. This thing? No way. This thing will just shoot past them all. It's huge. So an advantage really another difference between the Nakamichi and the Q90r is the fact that it has 2 HDMI in instead of 3. Might not be a big deal to some people, maybe some people who have an LG OLED who have, the ability to pass Atmos through directly from their TV, but a lot of people, I'm going to say a good bulk of people, don't have that. So the more inputs you have on your soundbar, the better it will be. So, if inputs are a little bit more important to you, consider the Nakamichi. Another difference is in the rears. There's only 2 rears. On the Nakamichi, there's 4. Also, the Nakamichi uses a very different spatial processing with SSE. So the difference is that this system is using phantom drivers to simulate height, and then discrete drivers just to have the rear sound. Then it's also got phantom drivers to simulate height in the front, and side-firing drivers to simulate the right and left speakers in the front. Basically, it fires sound all around you, as opposed to the Nakamichi, which primarily relies more on the rear speakers to give you that immersive experience. So, the other thing the Nakamichi does better, in my opinion, is it does bass way better. Like, there's no comparison at all. It probably boils down to the fact that this is just a smaller woofer and there's only a single one, whereas the Nakamichi has 2 10-inch drivers and they're big suckers and they shake the floor. But in regards to that, the Nakamichi's sound signature is very bass heavy everywhere. Like, every speaker has some form of bassiness to it. The Q90r is much more neutral, which makes the Q90r that much better for music as well. Some people prefer the neutral bass sound. To me, it didn't really personally make a huge difference, but, maybe you guys can tell me in the comments. Like, to each their own, really. Everyone's got their own preferences for things, right? The Q90r is significantly louder than the Nakamichi. I don't know why it is. I think it's to compensate for the fact that it doesn't have as many rears. So yeah, it's really loud. In small home living spaces or in apartments like mine, you don't need the volume that loud to really just feel the oomph of this system. Not the oomph is in bass, but the oomph is in just pure, overpowering sound. And yeah, one other difference, of course, I talked about it earlier, is the fact that the Nakamichi is much more versatile. So even though it takes up way more space, it has way more options. These speakers, if they're not set exactly the way that they're supposed to, your sound signature is completely lost, which is a huge bummer, in my opinion. The Nakamichi is a little bit more versatile that way, but also the Nakamichi has wires. So this doesn't have any wires, but the Nakamichi has wires going into the back of the sub. What else? So the Nakamichi automatically supports Dolby Vision, and it supports HDR10, but not HDR10 Plus. On QLEDs, this is a night and day difference. I hate to say it. When I fired up Gears of War 5 today for this little demo of mine, I noticed it immediately. Details just popped a lot more, and I think it just comes down to the fact that Samsung has made it so that their bar and the way that the HDR is implemented on QLEDs is very specific, and having their own products makes it match, which is just stupid. But I'm gonna call them out on it because I did notice it, Samsung. Thank you for that. Let's see, what else? So the Nakamichi, in terms of like sound and immersion, it definitely wins here because it just has a little bit of a better implementation of overall immersion. It doesn't just belt sound at you at like the speed of light, like ba-boom. This system here, the Q90r, it's so loud, like, and that's how it tries to make up for the fact that it's not quite as immersive as the Nakamichi. But weirdly, when it comes to Atmos, at least, the Q90r wins because the Q90r can just implement Atmos just a little bit better, and I think it's because of the phantom height channels, I think, but I'm not entirely sure. So which one should you buy? Well, if you're willing to pay the premium and you have a QLED TV and your setup is just right for this bar, like you've got a nice square room, completely enclosed, flat ceilings, you know what you're doing, you have the space to put the speakers behind your couch, then absolutely go for the Q90r. I would not dispute that. But if you're looking for more immersion and you want more bass, and you want more rear speakers, and you want more of a sound that surrounds you all around, like 360 degrees, and you want just a more natural feeling sound, if it actually feels like you're in the jungle of whatever you're watching or whatever you're playing, then the Nakamichi is for you. But just keep in mind the caveats of both systems. Let me know in the comments down below, which one do you want to buy? I'd love to know what you guys think. Also, if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel, I would be greatly appreciative. I am trying to grow this channel even more, and any word you can spread about this channel would be greatly appreciated. I might not do a soundbar review for a little while, but we shall see. I have an idea in the back of my head, but it may not be Atmos this time. It might be a different kind. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this, I hope you enjoyed this, and I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope I covered everything. If I didn't cover some stuff that you'd like to know about, please feel free to message me in the comments below, and I will get back to you probably just shortly after you message me. Anyways, guys, that's it for today. I've got to get going on other things now, and I'll let you know if I actually end up sticking with this bar. But I think, honestly, I might, just because for the implementation with the QLED TV, it just seems to be slightly better than the Nakamichi. But other TV brands, I have no idea how that will go. Anyways, guys, take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.